The truth sets you free. With the world's fastest reader, Howard Stephen Berg. Hi everyone, Howard Berg, world's fastest reader. Welcome to another Truth Sets You Free show. Very excited today. We have a wonderful guest. And first I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dr. Sog at the Wheatland Dental Center in Dallas, 3940 Wheatland Road. Highly recommend that you get in touch with him. He's been working 40 years, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. He literally won the hardest working dentist in the country award. No one has done more dental work than this man that I know of. He also works with sleep apnea, and he's the dentist for the NFL Players Association. People like Eric Dixon using his services. He literally flew in from L.A. to see Dr. Sugg here in Dallas, and I'm pretty sure they have dentists in L.A. So it says a lot. I mean, it certainly could go to anyone in the country. So write down that information and please get in touch with him. And a couple of weeks from now, I'm going to have his wife on as my guest. Well, I'd like to begin today with a quick learning tip. People often say, well, how can you get smarter? And there's actually 3 ways, and I thought today I would cover one of them. And it's ask better questions. The questions you ask really determine your outcome. About 150 years ago, the question was, can man fly? And the answer was no. Nobody had ever successfully flown. In fact, Da Vinci had created like an artificial wing to test it, and that's how he died. He crashed, and he broke his hip, and that led to pneumonia, and he ultimately died. So the answer was no. And then about 66, 70 years ago, the Wright brothers, who really weren't flight specialists, they were bicycle creators, and they created really a winged kite. The first plane wasn't really a plane; it was more of a kite. The first plane was by I think it was Curtis Armstrong. I'm pretty sure the planes we use today are based on his design.
Curtis, yeah.
And so the Wright brothers flew, and after that, 66 years after they flew, we landed on the moon. So think about it. For thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, no one had flown. 66 years after they flew a couple of feet, they really didn't fly that far, they landed on the moon. What happened? They asked different questions. The question wasn't, can we fly? The question is, how do you fly higher and further and longer? And as the questions changed, the results got better. And it's the questions that are often sabotaging your learning. People say to me, like, student, this is stupid. Why do I have to learn this? I'm sure you've heard that as a parent. Or, I'm bored, I don't want to learn this. And what is their brain hearing? Don't learn this. And what happens? They don't. So they put in the time and the effort and they don't learn anything. What if you, instead of saying, this is stupid, I don't want to learn it, you said, how can I learn this better, faster? Now what would happen is your brain looks for a solution. Because your conscious brain asks the questions, but your unconscious brain processes them like a computer. So you have to be very careful about the program you're running in your brain. If it's a loser program, say, why am I a loser? You'll find out why you're a loser. And it won't help you very much. You say, how can I be a winner? You're going to run a winner program. So while you're learning, you should always be engaged in asking questions that will lead to a positive outcome. And speaking of a positive outcome, we're going to have one today with our guest, Ann. And how do you pronounce your last name?
Zimbala.
Zimbala. I wanted to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, of course.
And she's the director of the Pierce Museum.
Yep.
So thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me, Howard.
And I was hoping you could tell us about the Pierce Museum and its history.
I'd be happy to. The Pierce Museum is a very unique place. It is part of Navarro College in Corsicana, Texas, down in central Texas, just about an hour south of here. Navarro College is a 2-year junior college, but it's 70 years old. It's been around a long time. It actually has a residential campus with dormitories and sports teams.
That's
and
unusual.
Clubs and all of that. Yes, it is, because most today people think of junior colleges as being community colleges with 2-year commuters and not much of a campus life. Our school, Navarro, is really more like a small college, a small 4-year college. And in fact, you can do a 4-year degree there by continuing on with Texas A&M Commerce has programs so that you can do a 4-year degree there in certain subjects. But for the most part, most of our students come in and get their basic requirements out of the way and then go on to a 4-year college, or they do a trades program, which we have many, including things like welding and farm agricultural science and
hands-on things you can actually do a living with.
We have a fire academy, a police academy, a nursing, very well-known nursing school. So it's a great college because there's lots of young people on campus because they do, the ones that attend the Corsicana campus live in the dormitories and have a very active life. And so to have a museum that's part of that is a lot of fun because it gives the kids something to do recreationally. They can bring their family and friends and be proud that they have a museum on campus with some really great collections. And we also work with the faculty of our college on many subjects, not just history and art, which are our primary collection topics, but civics and English and science and math. And the teachers are very creative about bringing their students over and utilizing our exhibits and collections in teaching, as a teaching tool. Then we also have, like most museums, a very great and growing K through 12 education program.
Oh,
we bring in school groups. At Navarro, they call it yellow bus season when the yellow buses pull up. We're part of a bigger education center. The Pierce Museum is one side of the Cook Education Center at the college, and the other side is a planetarium, which is also very unusual for a junior college to have. There aren't even that many planetariums left in Texas, and ours is one of the biggest. It holds almost 250 people.
Oh.
So we have a great time during the school year because school groups can come and do all of the exhibits and programs at our museum in the morning, have lunch in our center, which is also an event center, and has a big picnic area outside, and then go to the planetarium and see a great planetarium show, and it's a full-day field trip. Oh. So we're really serving a lot of different audiences at the Pierce. We, of course, have museum members and people who are particularly interested in our collection. I'm blessed because I have a very small paid staff, but I have about 25 great volunteers who have been with the Pierce, many of them since we opened in 2003, and they really are just fantastically educated. They've really learned our subject matters. They're great with tours. They do research in the collection. And I'll tell you,
some of them students?
Some of them started out as students, and now they're volunteers. I actually get to hire students on work study, so I do have students that work with me every year as well. So it's really a lot of fun. We get to do a lot of things that we probably wouldn't be able to do if we were just the 4 people I have on paid staff. We'd just barely be able to keep the doors open and keep people through. So,
good question. How did it end up in a junior college?
Yes.
Most junior colleges do not have museums.
They do not. So, and if they do, they're just small local history collections. We were lucky to have in Corsicana Chuck and Peggy Pierce. They were a very interesting and very generous couple. He was from Chicago. She was from upstate New York. They both came.
We're from upstate.
I can't pull it out. It's one of these small towns, and I can't pull it out.
I was in Binghamton for quite a few.
Binghamton, sure. Yeah.
I met my wife there.
Right. I think that Peggy was from that general area, but she met
Rod Sterling. That was the only person I know that's famous.
Rod Sterling. Well, Chuck and Peggy came from fairly wealthy backgrounds. His family was...
It's a good background to have.
Yeah, it's a good background to have. His family was involved with the Colgate-Palmolive Company.
Okay.
I think her family was involved with Procter & Gamble, although her father was just a country doctor, she always said. But they were wealthy enough to send both of them to Cornell University.
Good school.
And that is where they met.
Right down the road from Binghamton,
Correct,
actually.
it is. So
one of my professors worked at both schools, I remember
That's what makes me think that Peggy was from that
She had
general
to be
area.
Ithaca.
Yeah, probably Ithaca. So she met Chuck at Cornell. They fell in love and got married, and it was just before World War II. And Chuck went into the Army, and he went to serve in Europe during World War II. And when he came back from the war, he said to his father, I want to travel, I want to write, I want to do things with my life. I don't want to go into business.
He had the money.
And he had the money. And his father said, well, if you don't want to go into the family business, then go down to Texas and run your mother's cattle ranch. His mother was from Texas, and her family owned cattle ranches. This ranch, had 2 children, raised them, spent the rest of their life in Texas. Wow. And really fell in love with Texas, fell in love with the Southwest. They did travel all through Europe. Chuck did write books, nonfiction and fiction. They had a very full life. They developed 2 great hobbies. The first one was collecting Western art. And I think that came out as a real passion of theirs because they spent part of the year in a vacation house in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
And Santa Fe during the 1980s and 90s was a mecca for Western artists. And so they got very interested in collecting pieces of what they called modern Western art. And their rule of thumb was the artists had to be alive when they purchased something. So they weren't looking for Remingtons.
Was it paintings or was it statues or
both.
molds?
Both. They actually collected original paintings. They didn't collect a lot of prints. We don't have prints in our collection. So all of our pieces, it's almost 250 pieces, are original either oil paintings, pencil paintings, pastel, something like that. And sculpture, lots of sculpture, big, small. There's a huge one that sits outside of our building, and some very small ones that are almost like 3D cartoons. They're little funny vignettes of Western life. Mr. Pierce loved those especially. So that was an interest of theirs, and like most collectors, they started out just collecting for their house, but they filled up the Santa Fe house, they filled up the ranch house, they filled up the townhouse in Corsicana. They had I call it a townhouse, but it was another house in Corsicana. And that's when they realized they needed to give it to somebody as a collection and probably build a museum.
Did they actually build the building?
They did. They provided the primary funding. Other people did donate to the project. The college did raise some funds. But and people ask me, why did they give this collection and their other collection, which I'll talk about in a minute, to Navarro? What was their connection there? They didn't go there. Their children didn't go there. But because Corsicana is a relatively small town, they just knew people. They knew the presidents of the college. They knew faculty at the college through their golf club and other social activity. Relationship. And so they knew what a good school it was. Before they did the museum, they actually funded scholarships, and they built one of our dormitories. So they were very already involved. And they had been bringing pieces from Europe and giving them to the library and other things, and I think some of the artwork. And so they finally did just sit down and say, well, this is what we want to do. We want to build a museum and donate the collection to the college. And at the same time, they had been collecting, this was kind of started after the Western art, but they got very interested in the Civil War, and particularly in first-person accounts of the Civil War, letters and diaries and journals, the writings of the people who experienced the war and
North and South, or was it more?
North and South. And here again, they're, transplanted Yankees. But what they found interesting about the Civil War, especially through these letters, was the impact of a terrible conflict like the Civil War was on everyday people. So even though they do have, in our collection, we have almost over 16,000 documents. We have letters from Robert E. Lee and Ulysses Grant and Lincoln and just about every famous person. But what they really loved was getting a collection of letters from a family that was the family writing to the soldier and the soldier writing home over a period of time. And it's a very universal thing. So when you go through our letters, and what struck them was it didn't matter if you were fighting for the North or the South, the experience of the war and the hardship and the separation from loved ones, that all comes through very eloquently in these letters. They actually got hooked on this hobby, as it started out a hobby, because Mrs. Pierce read the biography of a Union officer named Joshua Chamberlain, and just got fascinated with him and started dragging Mr. Pierce around to Civil War sites associated with him. And then Mr. Pierce found out that on the auction market there was a letter that Joshua Chamberlain had written to his wife Fanny, a love letter. So he got it from Mrs. Pierce. They were a very devoted couple, so he thought it was romantic. He got this from Mrs. Pierce. But both of them were so taken by the emotions and the eloquence of this letter that just started this. Once they started collecting, they were all
16,000 pieces.
Yeah, and when they opened the museum in 2003, and again, they started collecting these documents and bringing them to the college library at that time and saying, here, we want to give you some of this for your archives. And then it quickly grew to this huge collection.
Is it one of the biggest collections of its kind in the country?
Yes, it definitely is. It definitely is. But the wonderful thing they did in the museum is not just put in a first-rate archival storage facility for these documents, but they hired a great exhibit designer and an exhibit design firm to come in and do an exhibit on the Civil War that is almost like a Williamsburg kind of thing. You walk in and you see soldiers hiding in bushes, and it's very 3D, it's very interactive. We have 3 different videos. We have a medical tent where they're reenacting an amputation. You know, we have it's a lot of activities. So
sounds like it's a large
building.
building.
It's actually a very large building. When people come in, they come into a relatively small lobby and they think, oh, this place is not that big. But then our galleries go off in a wedge shape. So the Civil War gallery is quite extensive. The art gallery is quite extensive. And then in addition to those 2 galleries, which are the heart of the museum and the reason we're called the Pierce Museum, 2 years ago, we opened a 3rd gallery, which is devoted to the story of prehistoric Texas. And that came about because of a collection of another family, not the Pierces, but another Corsicana family, the family of Robert Redding. Mr. Redding was an oil and gas surveyor, businessman. He was mayor of Corsicana, I think, at one point. But his hobby, his lifelong hobby, was to go out and walk the fields and, you know, ranches of our part of Central Texas and look for prehistoric Native American tools. He had done enough research to kind of know where the campgrounds were. I should back up and let you know that our part of Texas is a unique area called the Blackland Prairie. The Blackland Prairie is a stretch of Texas that runs from Houston up to here in Dallas, and it kind of follows I-45 and I-35. It's the area in between. We say it's the area between the Brazos and the Trinity, and now that's I-45 and I-35. And so that area in the middle is the Blackland Prairie. It's a very dense, rich soil, and so it was the most fertile part of Texas in the prehistoric period. And consequently, herds of originally mammoth went up and down following the seasons.
These aren't just
grazing.
the Indian tribes. These are really
really prehistoric Neolithic peoples. It goes back as far as 16,000 years ago.
Okay, that's
and
pretty
some of
old,
our
yeah.
artifacts go back.
I thought
that
maybe
far.
it was some of the original Indian tribes that
No,
were.
these are what
predates
yes,
the Indian tribes.
This is what they call the first peoples. You know, the peoples who came across the Siberian land bridge and ended up here and are the ancestors of our modern,
the Indians.
Yes, of our modern tribes. So, but they followed a pattern of following these herds of animals up and down the Blackland Prairie and camping. They were very migratory people. And because they camped and they used stone tools and hunted with stone weapons, then that's what got left behind. And so all
Because
over.
stone lasts.
Yes,
So.
because stone lasts. The wood went away, the leather went away. All of that dissolved in the thousands and thousands of years that have passed. But what's survived is these stone tools.
I just want to interpret, because I know we don't have a lot of time left, but we have some.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we talk about where is this museum?
Oh, yes, yes.
And what hours are its opening. So it's very, I mean, personally, I'm going to go. I have a neighbor who was one of my guests who worked for Disney as an artist, and I think he would love to see that art. And I would be more interested in the letters myself.
Yes, well,
that's just my passion.
About, you know, I say what unites all three of our galleries is storytelling. They tell great stories. You get great stories from the letters and diaries. You get great stories from the artwork because Pierce's loved narrative art. They loved art of action scenes and interesting people, things that drew you in. And then, of course, the Native American story is very much about storytelling, too. So we are in Corsicana, Texas.
Okay.
We are at 3100 West Collins, which is, if you come off of I-45, you get onto our main street, kind of follow signs for Navarro College, and it takes you right through Corsicana. You pass Collins Street Bakery.
That's what I thought. That's
in a good
where the name
place in
came
our
from.
historic downtown. And then you keep going, and you come out at our end of town where the college is, and you see the Cook Center. We're in the Cook Education Center. It's a big building with a big planetarium rotunda right as you enter campus. It's pretty easy to spot. And we are open Monday through Friday from 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. And we're open on Saturdays from noon to 4.
10 to 4 and noon to 4.
Right, 10 to 4 and noon to 4.
How much time should a person allow themselves to digest? It sounds that there's
if you
a lot.
want to see all three of our galleries, you really need to plan about 2 hours. Obviously, I have people who come and have less time, and we always have a guide there. We have wonderful docents. You don't have to take a guided tour. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the guides are there to kind of get people through it. And that's the first thing they ask: how much time do you have? And if people only have an hour, they do the tour, or they find out what they're most interested in. But you really need to give it 2 hours to really see everything.
And the planetarium, is that have a regular show every day?
The planetarium does have a show every Saturday. They have a show in the afternoon, sometimes 2. They might have 2, one at 1:30, one at 2:30. And then in the summer,
is there a charge for that?
They've charged $2.
That's
very
a donation.
low. Our charge is $8, but I can always tell people there's a coupon for $2 off in a brochure that's right outside our door. And it's only $5 for seniors and $4 for kids, and students are free. So it's very affordable day trip.
It'd be a nice day for someone
nice
to
trip.
bring a child. I grew up across the street from a planetarium.
Oh, yes.
And by the time I was 7, I was actually helping with the lectures because I'd seen all the shows like 100 times.
Right.
And it instilled the love of science in
Yes, and I love our planetarium for that. In the summer, they have shows every day, Monday through Friday, as well as Saturdays. But in the school years, they do school groups every day, but they also teach college classes in there, the astronomy classes and film classes and things. So they can't really be open to the public. But
Saturday is a good day.
Saturday's a
so
great
if you want
day
to bring your, what time you're open from 12 to 4?
We only open at 12. We're trying by spring to be open from 10 to 4 on Saturdays, but right now we're open at 12. And so what people will do is they'll go have lunch at Collins Street Bakery or one of our great restaurants downtown, and then come over and see us at 12. And then we always get them over to the planetarium at what time that show starts.
2-ish?
Yeah, 2-ish. And then they come back. If they haven't finished our galleries, they come back.
I enjoy that. I think I would love to do that.
It's a really fun afternoon trip.
The problem with our clock, it's not running. If you could help. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure, because I want to make sure we're keeping our timeline, and I can't see the time. Yeah. So we have about 3 minutes left. We talked about your connection with Navarro College. What kind of educational programs do you have? And we'll just make it really quick, and we'll do a wrap up.
At Navarro?
Yeah.
Well, you mean at the Pierce?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, we have everything for every grade. Really, what we like to do is customize the tour. So if a teacher calls me, I find out what grade level what subject areas they're interested in, and we customize the tour. Because some classes come in and just want to do an intensive experience with the art collection.
Okay.
Or somebody wants to just do the Civil War.
Do they actually have a hands-on maybe with the kids, where they can play at doing Western art?
Yes, all of our programs have some kind of hands-on component. We do Texas history in addition to Civil War history, because the Texas history comes through in the art and the Civil War. We have a special section of the Civil War exhibit on Texas and the Civil War, and then the prehistoric gallery is all about Texas. So we actually have a really fun hands-on set of activities from everything from we just did a first grade class, and we did a middle school class, and we're taking through an AP history class from the high school next week.
Be a good place for research if someone was looking to do a piece on Paleolithic Texas or on the Civil War.
Yes,
that would be
we actually serve researchers all over the country and all over the world. We've had a great group of volunteers who have transcribed our letters and scanned them in to the computer, and now they're indexing by keyword all of the documents so that researchers can really find out a lot online right now, and then come and see us and use our
put
collection.
the picture of the museum up on the screen so people can see it.
There you go.
And is it possible on the bottom to put the contact information at the same time or not?
Yes, please come and visit us in Corsicana.
I'm going to.
It's a wonderful trip.
Yes, it's not that far.
Once you get out of Dallas, you are smooth sailing all the way to
About 30,
Corsicana.
40 minutes?
Yeah, it took
once
me,
you get out of downtown.
Right, from Mesquite, it took me 40 minutes today.
Yeah, that's about what I would. I actually been to the cookie restaurant.
Yes, exactly.
Very good cookies.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful opportunity for have a nice day with your family and do something for your kids. And speaking of doing something for your kids, I would like to help your kids. If you need help with learning, you can call me at 214-952-9150 for a free consultation. Could be for your child, could be for your company or your church. You could email me at mrreader@msn.com, or even if you have a question you'd like to ask or a suggestion for a future show, or perhaps you'd like to be a guest on the show, that would be great too. Or you can go to my website, HBspeedreading.com. You have all kinds of resources there. We have my reading program, my learning system, all of which have a total satisfaction guarantee. And I even give you my contact information so I can personally mentor you if you need help with the programs. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, please let me know. If you'd like a theme for the show, let me know. If you'd like to be a guest, let me know. And I would love to be able to help you. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you and your family learn anything faster and better. And we have wonderful guests to discuss subjects of interest to everyone at the same time. So I see we're almost out of time, so I want to thank everyone for coming today. Remember how to stay smart, ask good questions. And until next time, this is Howard Berg, the world's fastest reader, wishing you and yours the best of success. See you next time. The truth sets you free. With the world's fastest reader, Howard Stephen Berg.